Coffee is everywhere. From bacon to biscuit, your breakfast isn't complete without the best part of waking up with Folgers in your cup. It keeps us awake, alert, attentive, and aware when we need those things the most. But what is coffee? Most importantly, what is caffeine? In reality, caffeine can be a harmful psychoactive drug if used improperly, and whether you get benefits or drawbacks from your caffeine, you need to better understand it before you use it.
A major problem with how people are consuming caffeine is the fact that they don't even know what the substance is. Caffeine is simply a chemical compound, C8H10N4O2, that enters and alters brain functions as any other psychoactive drugs would, just to a lesser extent than other substances. Coincidentally, for the most used drug, it is possibly the oldest as well. Its effects were first observed by some of the first humans, as noted by Mark Pendergrast in his book Uncommon Grounds. Possibly the cradle of all mankind, the ancient land of Abyssinia, now called Ethiopia, is the birthplace of coffee. The tale goes that a farmer found his goats dancing in a field one day after eating the fruit of a strange plant. He soon decided to join them. Our enamoration with caffeine begins, almost poetically, in the same place we do.
And from those small beginnings all the way up until now, around 500 billion cups of coffee are being consumed worldwide every year. A. Ludwig. No matter where you are in the world, for most places you can find caffeine on every other block. The most obvious places are in coffee shops, of course, but you can also find it in grocery stores, gas stations, and any sort of restaurant. One of the reasons caffeine is so popular among so many people is because of how public it is in society and how easy it is to acquire. Caffeine is arguably one of the easiest drugs to obtain in the world, and probably the most widespread. You can find caffeine in your coffee, of course, but according to a report by R.M. Gilbert, coffee only accounts for 54% of the worldwide caffeine intake. Another 43% comes from teas like your yerbs and oolongs, the rest being found in miscellaneous foods and beverages like in your cakes. Caffeine is also consumed by all ages. In her article in Neurovision, Jennifer Temple tells us that caffeine-containing beverages are specifically marketed to children as young as 4 years of age. Now, it's common knowledge that children shouldn't have caffeine. Caffeine is in your coffee, your cakes, and even your kids.
Everyone knows that caffeine makes you more alert, hence why everyone has to start their day with a good old cup of joe. Why this happens is not as hard to understand as the chemicals may make it seem. As informed by the wonderful video by Hassan Kasim for TED-Ed, as well as the book by Yifeng Chu, a more complete picture can be painted. Throughout the day, your brain accumulates a chemical known as adenosine, and when they attach to your adenosine receptors, it makes you feel tired and drowsy. What caffeine does is act as a substitute for the adenosine in the receptors, so you don't get that tired feeling throughout the day. Over time, extra adenosine receptors will be created to make up for the ones being used by caffeine. And the more receptors that are made in your brain, the higher your tolerance will be to the effect of the caffeine. Over time, if you suddenly stop drinking caffeine, the extra adenosine receptors will disappear after a few days. This can create a withdrawal symptom that includes headaches and dizziness due to the leaving adenosine receptors. This shows that coffee has more than just an effect on our day. It alters our nervous system. The chemical alterations to our bodies, though reversible, can seriously damage our ability to function due to a literal dependency. No matter if you think it is worth it, coffee is an addictive, physically altering substance.
There are many ways that caffeine can help your daily life if taken in the right amount, but it can also be harmful to you if you abuse it. As we mentioned before, caffeine is a drug, and like with any drug, you can get addicted. Joseph Strongberg, in his Smithsonian Magazine article, lays down how an addiction can start. Addiction normally starts due to the increased amount of dopamine in your brain when you consume a beverage or food that has caffeine in it. Along with blocking and creating new adenosine receptors, caffeine releases a chemical into your brain that is responsible for making you happy. Dopamine is produced naturally to reward you, but by drinking coffee, you're cheating the natural system. You've probably heard some other frauds say before that their day hasn't really started unless they've had their cup of coffee. In her Healthline article, Chani Bruzi reminds us that a morning cup isn't natural. This is negative because you are completely relying on a substance to keep you awake in the morning, when in reality, your body should be able to get up naturally. And in people who do not partake in the glorious beverage, there is almost no problem getting up naturally aside from a little bit of grumpiness. You could choose to disregard the unnatural nature of a morning cup of coffee due to the unnatural nature of society. And it is true that coffee can give you the energy needed in the offices today. In fact, a healthy amount of caffeine, normally described as under 400 milligrams a day, can increase productivity without giving you too much of an addiction. According to Honor Whitman's interview with Dr. Stephen E. Meredith, caffeine can have its pros. For example, as we all know, caffeine is a stimulant. It can give you energy, keep you focused, and help you stay awake writing a paper for English class. But it also has more obscure benefits. Studies have suggested that caffeine can reduce your chances of acquiring certain cancers by 20 to 50%, and may even prevent suicide, strokes, Parkinson's, and diabetes. However, like anything in today's world, there's a cost associated with caffeine as well. Caffeine and caffeinated beverages can contribute to insomnia, nervousness, restlessness, irritability, muscle tremors, and chronic heart palpitations. There are plenty of real examples of these things happening. Sinead Ryan tells us about how she collapsed after drinking the equivalent of 7 lattes a day. Joe Horgan told us that caffeine had harmed his mental health and interpersonal relationships when he drank up to 6 cups. But the thing that unites most horror stories about caffeine is that they didn't understand it, and so they suffered. But these are all chemical examples. There's a monetary cost as well. Many people don't own a coffee farm, so they have to buy their coffee from third parties like Peet's or Starbucks. According to Zach Cadwallader, the average price of a latte is $2.75, which doesn't sound like much at first, but it means that a latte every day for a month could end up costing you about $85. The $85 could have been put towards your bills or real food. By the end of the year, most people pay around $1,020 for a daily latte. As of writing, that's enough money for 3 totaled Lexus G300s or most of a 2009 Nissan Cube. This isn't even taking into account the fact that after a while you'll need more and more coffee for the same effects as 1 cup a day used to give you. In the end, it's up to you to decide whether the opportunity cost of a latte is worth the benefit of being able to work harder and the little extra preparation for the day it gives you. Coffee and caffeine can help you out, but they shouldn't be abused. Like any drug, we have to ask ourselves, do the benefits really outweigh the costs? The answer probably isn't yes or no, but somewhere in between.
What's not a gray area, though, is that when you walk down the street, you can find a coffee shop on every street corner of every block. Caffeine is the most social of any other psychoactive drug, mainly because all other substances of this type are illegal, depending where you live. Both caffeine and marijuana are both psychoactive substances, so why is one so accepted and encouraged in society while the other is completely rejected? There are many arguments for this, but one main reason is that the compound that makes up marijuana, this being THC, has been involved in case studies of psychosis. The problem with this is that research suggests that the consumption of 200 milligrams of caffeine or 5 cups of coffee combined with stress can cause psychotic symptoms as well. That may sound like a lot, but you have to take into effect that Monster energy drinks contain around 120 milligrams of caffeine in one tall can. 2 of these is more than enough to make you delusional, so why aren't energy drinks banned? There is also a possibility of caffeine overdose, and although very rare, it can still happen. A study by Kerrigan S. suggests that in excess of 5 grams or 5,000 milligrams of caffeine consumption in a short time span would be enough to OD on caffeine. Now, this is physically impossible to accomplish by just drinking coffee or energy drinks because you'll vomit by the time you reach your limit. This is possible, however, with caffeine powder. A report from ABC had a story of a man who died after swallowing 2 spoonfuls of internet bought pure caffeine powder with the same strength as 70 cans of Red Bull. It's not known whether the powder was just simply caffeine as it was internet bought, but no matter what, 70 cans of Red Bull will make you go completely psychotic and or insane.
So in the end, is caffeine a problem? Yeah, caffeine can damage your heart, mind, and soul if used improperly. But is it as bad as other drugs? Not in the slightest. Caffeine can maybe fight off your cancer, your dementia, and your depression, but it can also fight off your sleep, your heart, and maybe even your loved ones. When understood and used moderately, the worst lasting effect that caffeine addiction can give you is a hole in your wallet from all those lattes.
All right, my name's been Ben Landucci and Luca Maniscalco, and this has been my podcast. See ya.